Good evening, AVCS families and community members. My name is Paul Savage, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Osseo Valley Central School District. I've been the superintendent of schools at Osseo Valley for the past 15 years, and I'm honored to represent our wonderful district and be a part of our great communities. First and foremost, I do hope that you and your families are staying healthy. You're doing well through these very challenging times. We truly thank you for taking the time to watch our 2020-21 budget presentation this evening and hope that this information is helpful to you. I want to share that I speak with you this evening on behalf of the AVCS Board of Education, and not only as the leader of the school district, but also as a person who was born and raised in Osseo Forks. I come from a long line of family who have resided in our district for generations. I'm an alumni of AVCS. My own 2 now adult children attended and graduated from AVCS, and I'm a taxpayer and community member of our district as well. Therefore, I speak with you tonight while wearing many hats, and it's safe to say that our school district and communities are in my blood, and I care deeply about our schools and communities as well. As highlighted, this is a very different process for us this year due to the COVID crisis, where all school budget votes are required to only be done by absentee ballots, and we are required to share this budget presentation in a remote fashion as opposed to our usual in-person format. Nonetheless, we hope that you'll find this presentation informative, that you get a sense of how the budget process works, what the budget includes, how state aid cuts impact our school, and importantly, what the expected impact will be on you as taxpayers. These areas will be all covered in the upcoming presentation, and again, I hope you find it valuable and informative. Before I move on to the presentation video, I also want to share the following information. The PowerPoint presentation you'll see tonight is taped from the most recent board meeting where the budget proposal was presented and then adopted by our AVCS Board of Education for the upcoming vote. It covers all of the key aspects and required components of the AVCS budget. The presentation lasts about 40 minutes or so. Sorry about that, but it's hard to get it all covered in just a few minutes. Also, if you have any questions about the budget after watching, we are asking you to please email them directly to budget@avcsk12.org. Again, that's budget@avcsk12.org. We will review the questions and get back to you within the next day or so, and as soon as we can. We hope this information is helpful, and this process is helpful for you if you have any questions. We thank you for your continued support of AVCS and for caring about our children and communities. We know these are very challenging times, and we feel confident we have developed a budget that considers the students' needs as well as balancing the taxpayers' abilities to support. In the toughest of times, which we're in now, in terms of state budgets and federal budgets, our overall budget increase is very modest at a 1.03% increase. We are once again staying under the tax cap figure allowed for AVCS, all while trying to maintain essential programs and services to the best of our ability. That hasn't been easy. In closing, the question I get asked the most is, what does it all mean to me as a taxpayer in dollars? You'll see in the video and in our newsletter that you'll be receiving this week that on a $100,000 home, the total increase in taxes for a basic star recipient would be about $35. And for the senior enhanced star recipient, a total increase in taxes of about $15. Again, on a $100,000 home, it would be about $35 increase, and on a $100,000 home for senior enhanced star individuals, it'd be a $15 increase. We hope this helps because that is a question that gets asked quite a bit, and you'll see that in the presentation later. But if you're interested right up front, I want to make sure we shared that with you. Thanks again for your support. And please remember to exercise your right to vote. Your support of our schools and our communities is essential, and we're very appreciative for all that you do. Thank you, and have a good evening. I also appreciate, as I said before, I appreciate people joining us tonight. Really, tonight's presentation is going to be about what we know right now. And that's a big factor because what's happening is there's a great deal of uncertainty in the state. There's a great deal of uncertainty in the state budget. And as the governor said himself, he talked about, there's a lot of uncertainty. And until we know what our revenues are, until we know what we're going to really end up doing, there's not much we can do but go by what we know. And so tonight really is that opportunity. We have to accept the budget. We're adopt the budget tonight. We have to move forward. There are a lot of things that are still up in the air, and I'll talk about those as we go along. But as of today, this is where we're at, and this is what we're looking for tonight to have your board approval. Second slide, Randy, if you can. This is our budget philosophy. As you know, this is something that is not, this has been a standard for 15 years since I've been here. When we do the budget, this has been one continuous pattern of what we tried to accomplish in terms of the budget. And when you look at the budget, it's always about trying to provide high quality education programs during these fiscally challenging times. We know that this has been the last 15, I'd say the last 10 years has been a tremendously difficult time in education, and that happens to be with state ed issues and funding with budgets, and so there's a lot of factors. So that's been kind of at the core of our trying to figure out our budgets, as you know, when we build them. Also, to preserve educational programs while minimizing tax impact. That's been very, very difficult to maintain programs as much as we would like to because of where we've been and what's happened over the last number of years. Staying within the tax cap, that's a big item. As you know, the tax cap came out a number of years ago, and with the tax cap, that's something that we've always stayed under. So it's very important for people to understand that we've never exceeded the tax cap, and we've always stayed under the tax cap. So even with the tough times where you want to be able to get more revenue, we've tried very hard to maintain programs and services by still staying under that tax cap for our public and for our taxpayers. And then also our opportunity to plan for 2021 and 22 and beyond. As you know, when building a budget, these programs and these plans have to go out beyond just today. If I'm taking money from the fund balance to put in for this year, if we put that in there, what's going to happen next year? What's going to happen when we have less money? What happens to the overall impact of state aid? So we really have to think beyond. It's not a one-year budget cycle. It's always more. It's 2-3 years down the road that we're always looking. Now, the COVID impact has really had a significant impact on our state budget. I'm sure you know that. You've heard that from the governor. You've heard that from many others at this time. Not only is it hurting people at home, it's hurting the state budgets. And for us right now, the culture really is that we're expecting, no matter where we're at tonight, as I said, we're doing where we're supposed to be right as of today. We're expecting some cuts that are going to be even greater from the governor. He has established a look-back period. There's 3 look-back periods where he's going to assess where the state is after this COVID situation. And one is from February of this past year to April 30th. So he's going to look at that time frame and see where the revenues have come in. And if the revenues didn't meet where they expected, then he's going to look at cutting other areas, including schools and state aid. So he has that look back period, and we haven't hit that one yet. We're still waiting for the governor because it ended April 30th. We're waiting to see if he's looking at more cuts from there. Then he's going to do another look back period, May 1st through June 30th. Again, he'll look at the revenues, see where they're at. If they didn't meet expectations, he's going to have to find the money somewhere else. It'll probably come out of schools, healthcare, other places where the money is a bigger part of his budget. And the last look back period, which is kind of scary, is that's going to be from July 1st through December 30th. So that's a long-term part. So any time in those 3 look back periods, he could say to us, this is where your aid is right now, but we're going to cut this amount of money out of your budget. So the unknown and uncertainty going into this year is extremely difficult for schools, and planning is very difficult, but we're doing our very best based on what we know today and hoping for a better day tomorrow. So that's how we built this, and that's what we're expecting. Under the next slide, Randy, the tax cap impact. As you know, as I mentioned earlier, the tax cap has been in place for the last number of years, and started in 2012-13. And people get a little confused on the tax cap because it looks like it's a 2% tax cap. It really isn't. It's a tax cap that includes the lesser of inflation, 1.81 or 2%, and then is adjusted by some allowable exemptions. And so when you go through the formula, and I'll show it on the next slide after this, but when you go through the formula, the state comptroller's office for us this year is at 2.88%. Some years it could be 0, some years it could be 6%. It just depends on how the exemptions work out. But this year, the tax cap for Osceola Valley will be 2.88. Any tax levy proposal over this amount, if we wanted to go over that amount, we would require a 60% majority vote. We have not exceeded the tax cap, as I mentioned before, and we do not plan on exceeding the tax cap this year either. Even when it's as bad as it is, we do not plan on going over the tax cap at this time. Next slide, Randy. Thank you. The tax cap threshold, just so you know, this is the formula, how it's kind of, let's say it's a little financial focus, but this gives you a little idea of how it's figured out. They take your tax levy that, from the prior year, and then what they do is they work backwards. They figure out how the growth factor is, and you can see the numbers there. But basically, they'll take your exclusions out, as you see. It can be capital, court orders, things like that. Then they adjust your prior year levy. And then the growth factor that I mentioned was 1.81 or 2%, whatever's the lesser of CPI. And then you get your number, which is that 14,296,410. Our current year exclusions for this year allows us about $280,000 out of there. That's our TRS, that's retirement system. Our ERS is retirement system, and then any capital costs. So when you look at the stable number, there's your 2.88%. Every school district in New York State has a formula that's tied to this formula. And again, some schools may be at a total different rate than ours. They may be at 6%, 7% tax cap. They may even be at a negative tax percent. Depends on the scenario and how things work out. So that is just the formula that you use to get to that. And again, as I mentioned, even though it's 2.88, we are going to come under the tax cap this year at 2.86%. Next slide. The budget highlights. These are big ticket items for us. This is the kind of a summary of where we're at with the budget process this year. And the first thing that jumps out at you is a 0% increase in foundation aid. Foundation aid for us it's frozen basically, and it is what it is this is how we operate our schools. This runs our programs, our services, our instructional, and so we're basically receiving $0. Now, as I said, that could also change. That could go back to a negative at some point, depending on what happens with the governor's run. That's the scary part, and that's what we're waiting to hear as we move forward. The tax cap limitations, as I mentioned, is still in effect. That's still under the requirements of under the governor's requirements. Community school aid, that's $100,000 that we've received, and that's money that we've spent on counseling services and others. So it's not new money, but it shows in the budget. When you see your budget, it's kind of confusing. People say, no, you got 100,000 more. No, you didn't. It's already money that we've allotted for services in terms of counseling and also any kind of services that are related to those. With students, and so that's not new money. The cost savings and expenditure reductions, that's a big budget highlight this year in particular. We're really looking at trying to figure out, when we did this budget, how are we going to do this? Cost savings and expenditure reductions in the toughest of time, which we've done already. Our history, just to give people who might not know intimately like we do, we have actually since 2011-12 budget, we have really taken away about 34 different positions or programs. And I mean take away as in we didn't replace them through attrition. We had to take away services. That's a large amount. So when you're looking at people saying, are you being fiscally responsible? Well, we are, but at the same time, to what is the end cause? And so if you look over that time period, we've had about 34 different program services and positions since 2011 that we have eliminated. And that's significant. And I've talked about this before, is that at what point do you stop? At what point can't we continue going in the direction we are? But this year is not the year you're talking about it, because we're in the situation we're in with the COVID and everything else. So with that, also the health insurance, that's always a big ticket item. The health insurance, as you know, the rates went up significantly over the years. And but in terms of what we've done this year, the consortium had made a change. We're part of a consortium, which is a good thing, because there's more members, which allows more ability to have changes and savings. And so the change there has saved us a considerable amount of money. And through the consortium, it's probably saved millions. I don't know the exact dollar amount, but I know it's millions right now. And that's good for all the districts, because that's shared out among there. So the change from one group to the other, from Empire to Excelis to Empire, that has paid off. Also with that, when you look at the item of the federal stimulus support, why that's important is we need federal stimulus support. As you know, the president and Congress and the Senate have put out many different stimulus packages. I think there's been 3 so far. Maybe 2. I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3, but they've left out states and schools in that at this point. So we're pushing very hard with the federal legislators that we have to continue to put out a bill or stimulus money to the local states, and that would be handed down to the schools as well. That's coming up, we hope. We did meet with Congresswoman Stefanik last week. My CSO group met with her. And, you know, I think she was hoping and confident that there will be some. We just don't know what it will look like. And what we did do is encourage that if there's a stimulus package, make sure that it's targeted for school districts in the state, because what's happened is sometimes the money goes to the state and the schools are left out or given a small portion of it. We hope that when the federal folks do the next stimulus support package, that it's very specific to schools, and so that we can that will help us with our budgets as well, because we're incurring a great deal of pain right now in school budgets across the state. So that's something that's big for us, and something that we want to make sure that message gets sent. The next slide, please. This is the foundation aid history for AuSable Valley. This is our district. This tells you, you know, the foundation aid, as I mentioned, is something where you are how we run a school system. We need the foundation aid to help us with that. That's state aid. And you can take a look at what we've done since 2008, 08, 09, what's happened with the foundation aid. And really the important lines, if you follow that down, you can see the increase box on the right side, the far side, the percent increase. You can see that we've lived with a 0.3, a negative 0.88, negative 0.95, 384, 627, 678, working your way down to the point where you're at 2020-21, which is this proposed budget at 0. What that shows you is over the last, how many years, since 2008 till now, you can see that one box on the left under the foundation aid. You can see our total increase that we received. That's an average of about $120,000 we receive in state aid per year over that time period. $120,000 on a 30-something million budget is really, really small. So it's not like that we're being given a tremendous amount of aid in the first place. The GEA box is still in there, and what that was, just for people to know, that was money that was allotted for schools and was promised to the schools by the state. And then what got left was about $5.5 million that was still owed to AuSable Valley that we did not get back. So it was taken away and it was just forgotten, basically. That's across the board. That happened in a lot of, in all schools, but it was something that, is important to point out. We lost $5.5 million as well as received low increases in state aid. That's how we operate. That's how we run. So that's a big factor. Hard to operate with that. And as I mentioned, even with that foundation aid, we have that zero. That zero is likely to change to even more of a decrease because of the amount that we're waiting on from the governor. And the governor's percentage, we have heard anywhere from 0 to even 40% cut in aid. So just so you're aware of that piece of it as well. So a lot of this is with an asterisk in it, but at this point, we're just trying our best to give you what you have right now. Next page. This is the budget proposal, the state aid revenue. Again, this shows you a little more about where our money comes from, the revenue. That's the revenue side. So how do we operate? The foundation aid, as I mentioned, is 0, so we're not receiving any, and it could be less, as I mentioned. The 93 that shows in the BOCES looks like a positive, but what that is really just money that's reimbursements. This is not new money. This is money that's been spent on the BOCES. You can see the other big ticket item is the transportation, and that's the same thing. That's the transportation that has already been spent, and it's reimbursables from the state aid. So that's something that again looks like it looks a little deceiving when you see the total aid in the bottom. You're at $206,000 in aid. That's not accurate. The total aid increase that we're receiving is 0. The 206 is money that's already been spent in the prior year that you're getting back. So it's called reimbursements, reimbursables. So that just shows you where we're at. Again, kind of highlights another part of the whole picture. Next slide, please. This is the budget proposal. We often get asked, where's the money come from? How do you operate a school system? And we have these always in our budget newsletters that you receive, but wanted to put it on here tonight. The revenues. How do we operate? And basically, it's a combination between state and federal aid, which is the majority of it, and then the tax levy is about 42% of what we receive. So the tax levy from the public is 42% of our budget, and but mostly we rely on state and federal aid. And that's why when there's cuts in aid for a district like ours, when there's a cut in aid, it hurts us more than maybe others who might be considered a wealthier school district that has a very low portion of state and federal aid. Their impact is a lot less than what AuSable would be seeing with that percentage right there at 53%. So just shows you where the pie, how it's dissected, and how we are receiving it, and that's what we do for our school district each year. Next slide, please. All right, this is a little busy for you, but hopefully you can see it on there. But technically, what I'd like to show you is you can see the left column, the first column, which is the 2019-20 budget. That was the budget that was approved last year. So this is the current budget cycle that we're in now until June 30th. You can see that our tax levy increase last year was 2.69. And what that shows you is your state aid, your reserve fund balance all the way down through. So you can see where we're at. And then the next box over is where we were at in March. So when we met in March to kind of present the budget, this is what we knew at that time. We knew there was about a 1 point at the bottom, the very bottom. You'll see that the deficit was about 1.4 million at that time. So our goal from March till today was to find a way to make 1.42 million turn into zero so we can balance the budget and work that out. So that's been our challenge for the last number of weeks and last number of I'd say months now. But at that rate, so then you can see the next box itself is the 2020-21 proposed budget. That's the one we're proposing to the board tonight for approval and putting out to the public. It's at 2.86%. Again, the tax cap was set at 2.88. So if you follow that number, you can see where the dollar amount at the end would be 34,210,242. If you follow across that next the next budget over, you can see the increase and decrease in the amounts, and you can see that the state aid as it shows 1.15%. But again, that's a little misleading with the number that we talked about. You can see the negatives in there. If you look at some of the negatives, you can see that I just want to pick out a couple here for you on the revenue side. The fund balance and reserve, this is important for us. We were able to really work hard at saving. So when you see that fund balance number at the proposed budget, it's going to be about 875. What that is that's money that we've been able to save from the remainder of this year. We worked hard. We tried to freeze things very early on when we knew the budget was going to be tight. We got a little tighter with a lot of services, and also with different types of things in terms of managing control and costs in the buildings. And we were able to, by the end of the year, we're expecting to have about 875,000 that we can roll into this next budget. So and still leave our main fund balance that we had from last year alone for the meantime until we see what happens with the cuts and such. But right now, so that's good news that since the closing of school, we've been able to save a little bit more than normally would. That's the only side. That's not that's not to say we were happy about closing. Obviously, that's not what the goal was. But one of the offshoots of that was that there are some savings we've had in our building costs, as well as some of our transportation and other things. So that will help with the budget a little bit. As you work your way down, the salary portion, that's a very important thing to see. The salaries, and I'll mention that in a little while, but this is the third year in a row. So again, talking about being fiscally responsible or being fiscally aware, we try very hard to do our very best, but the last 3 years in a row, we've had a reduction in the salary. So if you look at that salary line, for the last 3 years, we've seen reductions in that. So that means that we've been keeping up as much as we can through attrition and other things to maintain as much as we can. But at the same time, we have to see some of those savings to save the budget as much as we can as well. So that's a very important part as well. The health insurance you see there, that is basically the health insurance is, it's not on there, but let me see, it's under the benefits. You'll see the increase there, and that mainly is the health insurance increase that we are seeing in the consortium. At the bottom of that number, which is a 1.03%, that's our total expenditures. So what we're proposing to the board and also to the community to vote on is a 1.03% increase in the budget. That's very minimal to run a school system, to provide the resources we need for all of our students. We have a wide range of programs and services that we're proud to offer our students. But at the same time, we're working really hard to stay very fiscally conservative at that point, and I think a 1.03% does fit that category. The next slide, please. This is how we have to provide the budget, how we have to break it down for the public and also during our presentations. So when you look at the budget itself, you have to do it in three categories. One is the program component, the administrative component, and the capital component. Again, I'll break it down in more details in a few minutes, but when you look at this right here, you can see what the increases are in the program. As I mentioned, that's 1.07. The administrative component, we're going to see a 2.23% decrease. And then the capital component, which is projects, other things, you're going to see a 2.94% increase. The total proposed budget, when you take those numbers, equals that 1.03% increase, as I mentioned. So a 1.03% increase in the budget is what we're providing and asking for folks to approve. Next slide, please. This breaks down the first part of those three criteria. This is the program component. And this basically shows you where our proposed budget is and what our adopted budget is in the second category. That was our adopted for this current year. And then you can see the increase total, and then you can see it in percent. Just a few items I'll pick out just for highlights right now. The contractual, where you see that minus decrease right now, that for us right now is we're looking at it's a program situation with our SRO officer. We're going to look at that as possibly reducing that at this point. We don't want to do that, but it's something that at this time we're really struggling to find the way to make it work. We will obviously try to make it work through grants or other things, but right now we have to remove that from the budget and where it's at right now. The materials and supplies, not much of a change there. Textbooks, 0. The BOCES services, when you see that column, it looks like it jumps out at you with a 53.19 reduction. That's the iReady. We're reducing that, which is a program that is used in our school buildings. We'll be reducing that to save money. You can follow down after that with special education categories. The BOCES service and tuition, you'll see that as a negative 11.65. What that basically represents is for us, sorry about that, I'm just trying to find my spot on this, I apologize. That's students who have left programs. So we're seeing a decrease in the overall amount in some of those programs. So we're seeing a savings there. Also a big ticket item is I would say the next one's the 13-point in-service training. It's about a $5,000 difference. And then also school library involved a retirement, and also the pupil services had a retirement in there, so we saw some savings there as well. So overall for the program, that's how the figure comes to 1.07%. That's the total increase that we would see with that. That's about $248,000. That's the first component, how we break out our budget. The next would be the next category. I'm sorry, the capital. I apologize. No, administrative. Sorry, administrative. That's what happens when you got two glasses and not glasses on. The administrative component, you can see that as well. That includes the Board of Education, Central Administration, Legal, Central, all those things. As you know, just to verify, there is no salary for board members. So when people see that, they might jump out and say that's a board members get paid. They do not. But for us, when you're looking at that part of it, the central administration decrease that you see of $112,000, that was a retirement in our administration. Also, when you're looking at the central services, we were seeing a 14% decrease, and our total administrative component, as I mentioned before, was about negative 2.23. So our budget's going down considerably with $91,000 in the administrative component of the budget. When you go to the capital part, which is the next column down, the third grouping that we have to provide, Basically, operations and maintenance, that's a decrease, which is significant, $98,000 overall, which is about 5.77. And that is also better data for us that we've used with the utilities and also our fuel expenses. That's a big factor for that. Employee benefits are up, and also the total capital component at the bottom is about 2.94%. So those are the three categories that you have to classify them in, and that kind of breaks it out specifically for you. Next slide, please. Here's the fund balance, and this is something that we worked really hard as a board and a team to try and increase over the years, because we had very little, many years ago, and the goal was to try and build that up. It's been harder with the tax cap world that we're in right now, but also, and it's been harder with this situation as well. But this shows the category of where we were at in 2019. So in June 30th, the end of last year, we had about $897,000 in fund balance. That's where we started the year at. This year, when you look at the total, we expected to have at the end of this year about 1.7 million, because we have that extra 875,000 we're looking to propose to you tonight to carry that money over. That's the savings we've had from the end of this year. We project that to be at 875. We would ask that you would approve that tonight and towards the budget, which would help us kind of solve some of the problems that we've been dealing with the cut in 0% in aid. That would leave us at the end of the year about $897,000, the same amount that we started the school year with. So, I think that's been very helpful for us with this budget. It's helped us stave off many additional cuts at this point. I don't know how much it'll save us if there's additional cuts from the governor and the percent that we're going to receive, but we're doing our very best, and that has been basically a lifesaver for some of our programs and services, as well as some of our much needed programs. So, the benefit reserve, we've put that in place for a number of years, and we're at 225 at that time. Next slide, please. This is our history, a very important chart. I think that we like to share where we've been and what the increase has been in the budget over the years. And the two columns that I really like to show is this has been back since 2005-06 and up till this year, 2020-21, that we're proposing to you. The big columns that I think are important when you look at the budget, when you look to the side, if you see the percent increase, and you can see where we've been over the last number of years. The increases have been at 1, 2, 3, negative 3, 3, 2, 4, 1. We've really tried really hard to keep a lower budget increase over those years. Even as I mentioned, in the toughest of times, when you're talking about the budget cycle we've been in the last number 10, 15 years, it's been very challenging across the state. And so we've tried to remain very low, but still provide programs and services, and that's been a challenge. When you look at the tax levy itself, look at that side, the tax, you can see the increase in the tax levy, what we've done over the last number of years. 2.8 we're projecting this year, 2.6 last year, 2.3%, 0, 2.3, 2.1, 2.1, 3%, 2%, 6% during a different time, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. So we've always tried to maintain a number that has been, fiscally responsible. We know it's tough on the taxpayers, so we try to keep that at a level that's maintainable, and but also still try to run our systems and programs here. And then the bottom line, which is the next column, the tax rates per thousand. That's always what people will ask you, what's the tax rate going to be? You can see the percentage that's been increased over those years again. You'll see 2.8, 1.8, 1.6, negative 1, 1.9, 1.75, 0.55, 2.75, and you can see all the rest. That's something that I feel we've been responsible with as a board and as a district, to try and keep that impact on the taxpayers as low as can be, and still be able to, for us to do the best we can as an educational system. So the tax rate we're proposing is going to be at $17.92 per thousand. That would be the increase that taxpayer would see. That would be a 2.8% increase in that tax rate. Next chart, please. This is always asked of us. We hear a lot of times that, oh, you're one of the higher tax districts in the counties, and I always like to share this. I blocked out the other schools just to help them. I don't want to embarrass other school districts, but those are legitimate school districts in our CVS area, our Champlain Valley. It's all of our districts, and as you can see, school 1 has a $23 per thousand, school 2 21, school 3 is a 20. 4, 5, 6, you get to us and we're at 17.42. We're not the highest. We're actually the lowest. We will be the lowest in Clinton County. We're either the second to lowest or the lowest in Clinton County. I know we run up against Essex County schools as well. They tend to be lower. The smaller schools tend to be lower, and those with a higher tax base that they have available. But it's important that people know that in Clinton County, we are one of the lowest, if not the lowest this year, tax rate per thousand. And that's with schools that are right next to us and right across from us and things like that. Essex County is lower by, as I said, by their tax base that they receive. So it's important that people know that, because often there's a misconception, and we try to put that out there. That's honest truth. That's where we're at. We want to make sure the facts are out there. Next slide, please. This is also a really fancy chart that my friend and colleague Scott Bro put together a number of years ago when we were looking at this data, because we were getting asked questions about how the district rates compared to other districts in terms of the what the tax rate, what we pay per student, the tax levy comparison, and so basically what this is, again, lists all those schools I mentioned prior in the prior slide, and then it takes where we rank in all of those categories. So 1, enrollment. If you look at our enrollment at AVCS, we are 7th in the whole Clinton Essex area in terms of enrollment numbers. We're 7th highest. If you look at the assessment tax rolls, we're 6th. If you look at the assessment per student, we're 8th in that group. When you look at the tax levy, we're 5. And then when you break it down by tax levy percent to the student, or if you break it down per student, we're 10th. We're 10th out of 17. I guess it's 17 different schools. Again, a misconception. Often people will ask you, what's your rate per student and things like that. We have a lot included in a lot of this, as you know, is also our size, our geographic size. We have 300 square miles. We encompass 9 townships. We have 3 counties that we cover. So a lot of that, when you look at figures, when people read figures, they often want to take your budgeted amount, your total budget, say 34 million, and then they take your 1,200 students, they divide that, and they say that's what your number is. Well, that's not really an accurate piece, because all of our transportation costs are in there, all our capital costs are in there. So if you had a project you're paying on, that makes a difference. There's so much more to just that. So this breaks it down, I think, in a cleaner version, and shows you the tax levy versus the student cost. And so that chart has been very helpful for us to kind of figure out where we're at really in factual numbers and also factual data. The next slide, please. This we include each year because there was a time when we were worried across the North Country about the population of our students. We saw a dip quite clearly. It was about 200 or 300 over a couple-year period back before this time frame, and this shows you the data that we have over the last number of years. And so since 09, 10, you can see we're really pretty flat and staying right where we're at, and that's good. We don't want the peaks and valleys. The peaks and valleys are difficult to deal with, and when you look at starting in 9, 10, we had 1,200. This past year we had 1,161, so a 40 student difference. That's quite different than most of the North Country schools. They're seeing significant decreases, and that can cause a problem on budgets as well. And so the data that you're seeing is important because we like to see that kind of stay flat. We like to see where there's not the peaks and valleys and the dips in enrollments and such. So we're happy with that. That has remained pretty much the same over the years. Again, as you know, we have pre-K programs, and that included about 53 in the first year. So that kind of brought our number up at that point to 1154. Just data for you to have at that point. Next slide, please. So because we're doing things very differently this year with the budgets, as you know, the absentee ballots are going to be sent out to all folks that are registered with the county as voters. So an absentee ballot will go to the homes, and they're going to be mailed out. Everything's to be due back to us by a certain time, and we'll talk about that in a second. But so everything's different. So again, this year we're going to do our budget hearing. It'll be very similar to what you're hearing tonight. It's actually will be probably pretty much what we said tonight, because if you adopt that tonight, this will be the message we want to send moving forward. And but Monday, June 1st, we'll do a PowerPoint like this at 6 p.m. and it'll be done remotely again, and we'll post that on our websites and also Facebook, so that people, if they want to watch and to be more informed as they vote, this will be an opportunity to hear that. Next slide. So the budget vote itself, this is important. It's not coming to school anymore to do your ballot and to check the machine. It's Tuesday, June 9th is the date that the state has required to have the budget vote on. All absentee ballots must be received by 5 p.m. at the district office that evening, because at 5 o'clock it'll close. We will have the tabulation at that point, and we'll see how the budget goes. We truly hope that people get out and vote. We need the support of the folks. As I said, this is a tough time in education. Your support of the budget is essential for our students and our programs and services. So we do hope people exercise their right to vote. Can't tell them how to vote, but I hope that they see that we're working really hard over these years to maintain something that is fiscally responsible, but at the same time trying to be responsible to our students, who are really what we're all about, as programs and services and students. So we ask that happen. As I mentioned prior, if people really want to look at it, we haven't replaced over 34 positions during that time frame. We also have had issues of significant changes in aid. We have fallen under the tax cap each year. Again, that all, I think, plays well into the hands of that. We've worked really hard for the district. This hasn't been easy, and I know it's not easy on the public, and it's not easy on our folks that are out there. But I do know that we've worked really hard on trying to maintain, to do the very best we can. We're asking for a 1.03% increase in the budget. It's very responsible in the toughest of times. And I will also add, and I skipped over it, and I should have mentioned it, which is always a big question. What does that mean for people? And it's on the slide that has our 15-year comparison, Randy. It's back maybe 2 or 3 or 4 slides. That one right there. If you look at what it means to the public, the estimated tax increase on a $100,000 home would be, with the budget we're proposing for regular star, would be $35 increase, $35. On a senior star, that would be an increase of $15. So when people want to ask that question, what does it mean to me? So if your house is assessed at $100,000, you would pay, with a regular star that you have, $35 more, and then the senior star would be at $15. We know times are tough, and any increase is important to people. But I think what we're providing as a district, $15 or $35 for folks, we would hope that they would see that the dollars are being put to good use, and that we're doing our very best for the towns and our schools and our communities and our children. So that is something that we will make sure that that'll be on your information, and that's the estimated tax increase for folks under that category. So other than that, the last slide is basically I thank you